Okay, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be reacting to Casually Explains video on Gen Z versus Millennials. I gotta say that this should be quite interesting considering I am a millennial and I want to see exactly what this video is talking about. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Make sure you like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you haven't done so, because we're gonna keep cranking out these videos. You know what I'm saying? Don't make me be wasting my time, all right? Let's get it.
When someone says they were born in the year 2002, I automatically think, damn, this is the oldest looking 6-year-old I've ever seen. Well, I won't be using that one when they ask me about the island. I was born in 1996, making me just barely a millennial, meaning I'm somewhat of an expert on my older cohort who thinks doggo, pupper, adulting, and having an actual wedding to a real person they love is still a thing, while also being able to tell Gen Z that making fun of us for skinny jeans doesn't do anything. We inherited housing prices and 3 financial crises from the baby boomers. You will not even remotely psychologically affect us. You will not even remotely psychologically affect most of us. The first thing we have to do is obviously define the generations, which in the textbook is 1981 to 1996 for.
So me, I'm with this gang here. I'm with these guys. I'm with these guys here. You know what I'm saying? I was born in 1989. So yeah, I'm not one of the early millennials. I wasn't born like in the beginning of it, but I'm kind of like in the sweet spot. You know what I'm saying? If you know, you know. If you're late 80s, early 90s, then you know. We like the sweet spot millennials. You know what I'm saying?
Millennials, and 1997 to 2012 for Gen Z. Problem is, it can be hard to tell when you're kinda in the middle, because to the outside observer, Gen Z might look a lot older than they are on account of all the Botox and filler, whereas millennials look a lot younger than they are on account of all the Botox and filler, meaning you have to look at behavioral cues to tell the difference. Because us millennials are trying so hard to cling on to our youth, we're in fact only differentiable from Gen Z by 3 things: ankle socks, hairlines, and when a DJ says, "Put your hands up," we do it with an open palm, whereas Gen Z does it with a closed palm. Gen Z does this because you automatically close your hand when you associate with dropping down to the floor, whereas millennials raise an open palm because we don't think Black Lives Matter. While it might sound like I'm here representing my fellow millennials, I did only squeak in there by 1 year, and there are some millennialisms that are too ancient even for me. Take for example answering the phone. Why? Similarly, Gen X still texts like they have an old school brick phone, meaning all of their messages are like, yo, bring drinks, see you at 5, sunglasses emoji. Which is at least chill and straight to the point.
They do be texting
Millennials,
like
in contrast, have all evolved the 2-thumb texting technique, meaning they're able to send you a single paragraph-long text like it's an email that you avoid opening at all costs until you really have to respond. Gen Z, on the other hand, sends multiple messages to indicate punctuation or a different thought, usually ending it with a skull emoji to tell you they've died and will no longer be texting you back. If you're a smug elder millennial who's like, why does my younger sibling send 4 messages back to back when they could have just typed it in 1 message? That shit is so annoying. First of all, if you're annoyed because you have your phone on vibrate when I'm texting you, you can stick it up your ass. Second, if you looked at literacy statistics recently, Gen Z doesn't know how to read, so they don't know how to punctuate in the first place. And last,
That is because they decided to remove cursive from the curriculum. I'm truly convinced, and I'm sticking with that. I'm convinced that because they decided to take cursive out of the curriculum, that's why part of them is why some of them can't read. Not all, but yeah, I think that's one of the reasons.
lastly, multiple messages is clearly the superior form of texting, anyone except your boss, because it allows you to better punctuate your rap battles with the homies. If you think about it, line breaks are literally poetry. When it comes to socializing and how you like to have a good time, millennials and Gen X are notorious alcoholics, but Gen X also does cocaine and millennials instead do weed. Gen X are alcoholics on cocaine because it was the rock and roll culture of the time, whereas millennials are alcoholics and smoke weed because they all have anxiety and need to self-medicate in order to socialize. Gen Z, on the other hand, was very gently parented, don't even pretend they'll ever own a home, and never socialize publicly, so they just take Tren, Zins, and Goon for dopamine. One thing that Gen Z clearly outdid the millennials on is their slang, because just like high school, millennials also blundered the language on more than one occasion, coining such terrible turns of phrase as doggo, adulting, epic win, on fleek, it's lit fam, swag, I can't even, I did a thing, and calling any type of knowledge hacks. In contrast, Gen Z slang had a stranglehold on our broader vocabularies right away. For example, here's some Gen Z slang you hear all the time, which I will now translate in case it's not clocking to you. Let him cook. He's in the process of doing something well that isn't cooking, so don't interrupt him. She ate. She looked good or did something well that isn't eating. Riz. Charismatically flirting. Crash out. Mental breakdown. Shit slaps. It's really good. Fire. It's really good. Hits different. It's really good. Bussin'. It's really good. Gas. It's really good. No cap. For real. On God. For real. True. For real, facts, for real, deadass, for real, for real, for real, for real. One thing that...
Yo, I'm not gonna lie. I will give Gen Z that. When it comes to slang, they definitely take the cake. And he just named just a few of them. I mean, there's plenty of more I can't think of right now. But I don't know if he said on God. I don't think he said on God, but that's one of them. What else? My G. It's just a whole bunch of different slang terms that Gen Z did come up with that got everybody in the chokehold, from millennials. I don't know about Gen X though, but yeah, definitely us millennials. We took heed to their slang.
older millennials have a terrible take on is that Gen Z has bad fashion. Gen Z has great fashion, especially compared to us millennials at the same age. Besides, when most millennials were teenagers, social media hadn't been invented yet, so instead of growing up trying to imitate the most liked Instagram trend, we had peace, contentment, and mixed and matched our clothing like a hand-me-down buffet exactly to our own taste. We didn't dress to impress, we dressed to express our deep cultural anxiety and fear of bothering our parents in case the baby boomers got mad at us, which they pretty much always were. You might not like it, but this was peak millennial fashion. To prove that Gen Z has better fashion than millennials,
Well, for me growing up, if we're talking about let me see. If we're talking about the late 90s, 2000s, going into the 2000s, everything was oversized. I mean, things were oversized in the 90s too, but it really went to out of orbit by the time the 2000s came. I mean, you wasn't him unless you had a long, crispy 3X t-shirt, white t-shirt. You could do black too. And then you had to have the flight jacket with the orange guts. If you know, you know. You had to have that. You had to have the multicolored fitted New Eras. Those were very popular. And then you had to have your jersey. And you couldn't just have any jersey. You had to have an authentic jersey, a hardwood classic jersey, okay? One that was stitched all the way through. Not one of those swingmans with the tackle till. I mean, if you rocked it, you rocked it. Now, I ain't gonna lie. I didn't have one of those authentic joints. I did have a swingman. I had an Allen Iverson 76ers joint. It was a Nike joint. It wasn't, stitched all the way through because, my parents was not buying me that. So I was content with my Nike swingman jersey, and, I still was cool with that. But fashion was very interesting for me and my peers coming up in the 2000s as teenagers. It was really all about your shoe game, having a crispy white t-shirt, having some Pepe jeans. What else was out? LRG. What else did we have back then? Lot 29, Pele. Yeah, I'm taking it back. Let me see. It was just a whole bunch of stuff. I can't even think. It's so much, but yeah.
Today's social media, it's common for an influencer to be chatting up girls on the street like, yo, you're so pretty, can I get your number? And she's like, I'm 16. And the guy's like, oh my God, you can't be 16. What? I gotta get out of here, chat. Back in my day, you'd already know they were 16 because we were all ugly. Furthermore, Gen Alpha now thinks that point-and-shoot digital cameras give a cool vintage look, meaning guess what? Low-rise bedazzled jeans are getting thrifted, and American Apparel hoodies are right around the corner. We are so back, baby. At the end of the day, ask most millennials, and we sort of feel we grew up in the best era to be kids, but the worst era to be adults.
That is very true. If you were a kid throughout the 90s, teenager in the 2000s, I mean, it was like peak civilization because everything just seemed to be clicking, back then. Kids had their space, things that they were into. You know, the adults had their space, teenagers had, everybody just had their own designated space, a safe space back in those times. Yeah, it could get rough, it could get rowdy. I mean, but that's what made us authentic. That's what made us unique. But then when we got to be adults, it's like it didn't translate over. Technology has a lot to do with that, in my opinion, because the jobs that Gen X and even some of the baby boomers had, a lot of those jobs went away, and they just weren't, like, I came out of high school in 2008. That's when I graduated. I was supposed to graduate in '07, but my birthday is late. But yeah, so I graduated high school in 2008, and this is when the recession happened. So just as I'm coming out of high school, all hell breaks loose. The markets crash, and we never really even bounced back from that. And here we are now, 2020 rolls around, just as us millennials, us like sweet spot millennials, as I like to call us, late 80s, early 90s, just as we're, you know, entering our 30s, here comes the, you know, the vid or whatever. And now we're still kind of being affected by that due to the inflation and stuff. So yeah, it sucks in a way.
Gen Z, on the other hand, just thinks, wait, things were actually good? As an example, when someone says make America great again, Gen Z thinks you can't make something great again if it was always trash. But baby boomers think, I remember when me and Steve worked for Chrysler and Detroit was the richest city in the whole world. I bought a house for me, my wife, and my 8 brothers and sisters back when we were 23. But millennials hear make America great again and think, remember the first 150 Pokemon, the Sega Genesis, Rock Band,
Spice
growing
Girl
up without a
stickers.
cell phone, when you made YouTube videos just for fun, getting free malware on LimeWire, using an iPod
Burning
Touch
disc,
to pretend
yep.
to drink beer, how people would say, too soon. After you made a 9/11 joke, remember how badly we fucked up our teenage years, but it
forget
didn't matter
MySpace.
because we had no social media? Remember smog? As I was reading this, I got nostalgic and remembered some more things, so I redid the video so I could keep going. Remember Deltora Quest? Ordering things from the Scholastic Book Fair? The Bermuda Triangle? Remember burning a CD? Remember
just said
CD
that.
drives in the first place? Remember when DLC was just another game called an expansion pack? Remember rewinding a VHS before you returned it to Blockbuster?
Oh, or remember, you know, when you figured out that you could take a VHS tape, right? And you could put some tape on the back of it, and that allowed you to record it. So if you had, let's just say, a movie that you didn't necessarily care about, but you wanted to record something off the TV, you would just put a piece of tape on the back, and you was good as golden. You know what I'm saying? When I figured that out, it was up from there. I was recording like crazy. I had hella tapes where I recorded Yu-Gi-Oh, Speed Racer X, a few things. I was heavy into recording content back then. I've always been into content and everything like that, and just videography and just media, period. Like, yeah,
I remember.
we all do.
Anyway, us millennials are going to go stare at the Winamp visualizer for a while. You guys can talk amongst yourselves. Now, unlike me and most of the people I know who can't remember anything, nearly everything that you've done online is remembered forever somewhere, which is why you should consider today's sponsor, Incogni. As we both know, your online activity is not just stored forever between the two of us in our OnlyFans DMs, but also by data brokers who resell your information online for LimeWire. That was just piracy. Saying, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. This wasn't the case for LimeWire, that was just piracy, but nowadays it's pretty much true. When you submit your data online to a website or they ask to track your information in exchange for a cookie that they never seem to deliver,
Okay, so
that
you
data
just-
is often getting stored and resold to third parties on the phone. Incogni acts on your behalf to request that these large brokers remove. It would be really annoying and take. It saved me over 100 hours. My only complaint is I'm not sure who Melissa is. They could have sent me a picture first. Additionally, with their new custom removals plan, if you found your personal information on websites like Whitepage work to remove your pro or robbed a bank, it doesn't work on that. You have to live with your mistakes on that one. If you'd like to give Incogni a try, use the code CASUALLY at the link in the description and save 60% off in annual.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much the end of the video, because that's just the sponsor at this point. But yeah, anyway, that was a good one. Just doing a quick compare and contrast to Gen Z and Millennials. I mean, us millennials are like dead smack in the middle between Gen X and Gen Z. So we kind of got a good blend of both. Like we were raised, and our parents, some millennials born around the time I was born have parents that are baby boomers, and some of us have parents who were born in Gen X. My parents were born in Gen X, late 60s, late 60s. So we got a good blend of what it was like to, F around and find out. But then we also, were young enough to understand how powerful the internet could be, because millennials, I mean, we low key kicked this off, you know what I'm saying, with social media and getting on the internet and making content, so we kicked it off. We started it. And then Gen Z, they just took it out the park. And there's even some people, my age and younger, young other millennials that are a little younger than me and older, that, we definitely are the pinnacle of the digital age. Millennials and Gen Z, we are the pinnacle of the digital age. You know what I'm saying? Because everything just changed once, technology became what it is now. So, but that was a good one. Y'all let me know down in the comments what y'all think. Let me know what generation you were born in, and maybe go back down memory lane. Tell us some of the things you remember about when you were maybe a kid or a teenager, or how things once were, and yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. Make sure you like, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'm gonna make sure I keep saying that until y'all do it. And yeah, it's your boy Robbie, and I am out.